right, welcome back to another edition of We Rise Fighting Labor podcast. We bring you today's labor news, history, and analysis from the U.S. and around the world. This is a podcast you listen to with your fellow workers organizing on the shop floor. This is a podcast you listen to before walking into your union meeting. As always, I'm Rico Rutia, here with my co-host, Brian Pfeiffer.
All right, welcome, listeners. This is Brian from We Rise Fighting. It's co-host Rick. We're here very honored to be with three of our fellow workers this evening. And this is the episode titled We Women of Labor. And we're going to start with asking some questions, but also have a conversation here with our fellow workers from all of the United States. We have San Antonio represented tonight, the Appalachians, and of course, Wisconsin. So we'd just like to ask our friends here and fellow workers, please tell us your name and organizational affiliation and why you became a worker and or leader, a union leader, or a community organizer, and about some of the work you've been doing. So why don't we start off with Joanna?
Thanks, Brian. Thanks so much for having me on today. I am a board member of AFSCME Local 1. That is the Wisconsin State Employees Union. I personally have been a state worker for almost 11 years, and I had recently learned that I could still join the state employee union. As in Wisconsin, we have Act 10 legislation that prohibits bargaining for public workers. So when I found that out, I was really excited. And I've always been passionate about labor rights, and I took some collective bargaining courses in college, and my dad was a union member, so it's just very important to me to get involved, and especially seeing that we can seize the momentum and hopefully try to make some positive movement for worker rights in Wisconsin.
All right, welcome to the show. And Crystal, you're out there at Virginia Tech. Been doing a lot of work in Appalachia, Southwest Virginia, and other locations. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. We have defeated the cops now since 4:30. So solidarity with all workers everywhere. It was a beautiful thing to hear everybody chanting and the cops fall back. They just backed up a little bit. So it's a little on edge right now. But
Actually, yeah. Crystal, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind giving us, our listeners, a little context where you're at, what you're doing, what's going on there? Because we can see, but, just so they know.
At Virginia Tech right now, they are standing in solidarity. We are all standing in solidarity with the students, just standing in solidarity with what's going on in Palestine and the horrific actions that this school is definitely funding. We also have the Rapid Arsenal close by. We have Elbit. They've detained a couple of people there with some actions. We're just protesting, really. But there are so many people here. It is amazing. And I can't tell you how many jail support forms I have filled out right now. That is also amazing. That's what I'm walking around with now, marketing jail support forms. But if you can just see how people just go on and on and on. And then the faculty and the students that are willing to take a rest are all locked in arms as folks are praying behind them right now. Youngkin was on TV this morning saying that there was no encampment at Virginia Tech, but I can assure you this has been going on since Friday morning at 4 a.m. So they won't let us have tents on, I guess, for picture purposes. Media looks bad. They don't want to admit it's an encampment, but it is. And so, that feels really good.
That's cool. So if we could, continue to ask, who you are a little bit and what turned you into a union or community activist. And I guess if you could also just be considering where you are right now, if you could connect them for us a little bit, like this is a labor show. And we also report on Palestine every week. How do you see the connection?
I mean, people shouldn't be doing shitty jobs. One of the tech students did a interview with them for a paper at the end of the year, an environmental engineer. And I'm like, you don't have to be rich. Nobody has to be rich. Don't do shitty projects, like think about the people communities that you're going into. And here, these people pay a lot of money to go to this school. And I'm learning every day, like learn today. This has been like a military institute since 1941. They make drones that are being used to kill innocent people. And that's all happening right here, Virginia Tech. So they've had a lot of student unions. I mean, they're trying really hard down here to make shit right. And what I'm finding is, so I've been in a pipeline fight and do jail support, and like you can't deny all these struggles aren't connected, because I see people at each one's, like you start building this community, and it's, being here and seeing so many people from pipeline fight and whatnot, like the sooner everybody realizes we're all in this together, it's over for them. So it's a good start. I mean, I had a lot of jail support forms filled out, but then when they seen that they held off the cops that last time, we had to go get more copies made, because it empowered all the people who decided to stand over here to go and stand with the folks over here. And that was because they saw the power of the people. So that was beautiful. That was a beautiful moment. Everybody was cheering. It was awesome.
That sounds like a beautiful moment. Thank you for sharing, where you're coming from and all that. Alejandra, welcome back. Good to see you again. And yeah, for the benefit of our newer listeners or the ones who didn't catch you on our show last time, could you give us a little bit about who you are and what turned you into a labor activist, a community activist?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's great to join y'all again, Rick and Brian, and an honor to be here with you, Joanna and Crystal. My name is Alejandra Lopez. I serve as the proud president of the San Antonio Alliance of Teachers and Support Personnel. We are an education union. We're a merged local, so affiliated with both NEA and AFT. Wall-to-wall teachers, bus drivers, food service workers, custodians down here in San Antonio, Texas. And I am here because of a number of reasons. My father is a union iron worker. So I grew up in a union family down here in San Antonio, Texas, which I am more and more grateful for every day. My mom is an immigrant from Mexico, and that definitely shaped my understanding of the world and of politics. And when I moved back home after a stint away, I lived for about 10 years in the Bay Area and in England, where my partner is from. I became a public school teacher, and I was incredibly fortunate to be able to join the largest union in San Antonio, the San Antonio Alliance, and became more involved when Trump was elected as a part of a working group to protect our undocumented students and families under Trump's immigration policies, and then became even more active when under our previous superintendent, who was a very aggressive pro-privatization superintendent, made a deal for the elementary school that I was teaching at to be sold off to, well, not technically sold off, but it might as well have been given over to an out-of-state charter operator. So those were the things that drew me deeper into the work. But I am here because I'm a part of a rank and file caucus called Poder, which means power in Spanish, that is explicitly focused on rank and file organizing and social justice unionism. And in 2020, we ran on a platform that really centered democratic decision making and fighting alongside our students and parents and communities for, the San Antonio that we all deserve. And we won a majority of leadership positions on our executive council. And so since then, we've been building our fighting, organizing muscles along the same trajectory of big fighting unions like UTLA and CTU. And we're just trying to prove that you can use those same strategy and tactics down here in a anti-collective bargaining state in a place where workers are constantly under attack, where women are constantly under attack, where people of color, where young people, where LGBTQ plus people are constantly under attack. As we've seen just in the past week, where the governor is perfectly okay to send in, state troopers and local police to break up pro-Palestinian movement down at UT. So incredibly proud to be here with y'all.
All right. So the three of you all come from states where there presently is a lot of anti-union laws on the books, but in particular, Virginia and Texas, of course, haven't had a good track record in terms of pro-labor. There's been a lot of right to work, those types of things. But at the same time, there's a very rich history of resistance from the people in unions, community organizations, and many other places, many other formations from the people, including workers at the central location of that resistance. And also women have played a huge role in that. In the last 10 years or so, there's been a lot more women in leadership positions, not just formations like auxiliaries and unions. So we just wanted to ask a couple questions kind of related, in terms of that, just the history of resistance, the role of women in labor, and see what y'all had to say about some of that. So Joanna.
Yeah, definitely, Brian. I think that, historically women have been, in front and center of the labor movement. I mean, if we think back to the first organizations back in textile mills, and Mother Jones. So we can definitely be inspired from women of labor history. Also, currently there are a lot of great women leading the labor movement. One of my personal favorites is Sarah Nelson. I really enjoy listening to her. She is the president of the American Federation of the Federation of Flight Attendants, and she's just really inspiring. She has a lot of great organizational ideas I like to take from. Also, recently, like last year, and I got to meet one of the members at the Labor Notes conference last weekend, but a member of the North Hollywood Strippers United. And that was just an amazing organizational story of all women who just would not back down. And it was just amazing how they came together and worked so long and so hard to get their union, get their workplace safer and have better conditions. And it's just they employed some great creative tactics, and they're just super inspiring. So I think women in the labor movement have always been here. I'm really grateful to be among so many great leaders. And so I like to listen and take from that moving forward.
Right. Crystal, are you available? You live in an area where there's a long history, the daughters of Mother Jones, mine workers, all kinds of stuff down there in Southwest Virginia.
So I'm sitting here in front of what I think is about to be some agitators. So I can't say, I think before I met Brian was like probably one of the first people that turned me on to unions and all that stuff. Because I've always worked for myself. But I cannot deny, like, women are leading these social movements and, just learning from so many of them, and especially in the environmental movement. Like I slept on the road in DC with a woman that they called her the nun in the miniskirt, because she was like, stole a whole bunch of Black Panther records and like did something with she did some stuff, and the FBI was on the hunt for her way back when, and she had to hitchhike all the way to Los Angeles. And she said, that's when the FBI would give up on you. You could just disappear for a while. And it's just, I mean, these are 80 and 90-year-old women. And so I can't say I know a lot. Mother Jones, I do know. But just sitting and listening with them, it just inspires me every day and keeps me going, because it is work. And I recognize that in other women that, you have to go home and cook for your kid at night, or you have to go do a part-time job like I'll have to do whenever happens. So always in solidarity with women. And, even with Brian, that's something that he's always uplifted and made me realize more when he was down here. So I always appreciate you for that, because you keep the pictures coming and keep me motivated. So.
All right, solidarity. So Alejandra, you have a great fighter right behind you in the mural, and maybe if you can explain who our great historical friend is there behind you, and what's your thoughts on the history of resistance and women in unions and community activities?
Yeah, so behind me, this is a mural from my neighborhood featuring Nayuka, who was a Mexican-American union leader, rank and file union leader, I should say. She led one of the largest strikes in history here in San Antonio of pecan shellers, who were also girls and women, mainly, again, like Mexican women. And, it's been one of the greatest kind of stories of my time that she's finally getting the recognition that she deserves. As a teacher, I know how important it is who you're taught about in schools. And, having gone through K through 12 public education here in San Antonio, I can definitely say with certainty that I was taught from a white supremacist, assimilationist viewpoint constantly. And I became a teacher because I wanted to be the teacher that I didn't have growing up. I didn't learn about the rich history of, my community until I took Mexican American Studies courses in college. And, you shouldn't have to go to, a university to get the history of your people, to get the history of social movements. And so a lot of the work that I've done in our local alongside my comrades in the caucus is around culturally responsive teaching, ensuring that our district, which is 96% students of color, largely from working class backgrounds, are being told the stories like Nayuka. Because, like Crystal just said, right, when people see other people coming together and acting together, right, in solidarity with one another, it empowers them. And, to see that in real life, like the people at all of the universities are seeing in real life is fantastic and powerful. But it's also powerful to read about it, to learn about it in a classroom. And so I think it's so important for us to be uplifting the stories of, women union leaders. I am in a female dominated profession. Teaching is, majority women. Our two national affiliates have, women presidents, and they're some of the most, powerful positions in the country. That said, I also have the pleasure of serving as the vice president of the San Antonio Central Labor Council, a space that is not women dominated because of the trades and because of the makeup of the trades, right? And so, I think I can speak with some certainty that we have a long way to go until women are, equally respected in spaces in labor. And I'm proud to be a part of working with other women in our city to ensure that, we are making these spaces accessible and safe for women and for other marginalized groups. Because I think one of the things that we have to reckon with and grapple with within our labor movement is, the inequities that have existed, the way that labor has perpetuated sexism and racism, et cetera. And, I think we can't move forward unless we really grapple with the nuances and the tension there. And then, I'm happy to have people around me who are really willing to engage in that.
Thank you, Alejandra. That actually leads me to a question I had on the tip of my tongue as you were saying that. So it's a very simple question. What needs to be done right now? What needs to be done as far as women being represented in labor, as far as education against the patriarchy, maybe against men, for men, something like that. What needs to be done? Is it more organizing of women? Like, what's the first thing that comes to mind as far as what needs to be done, as far as women in labor, in the labor movement and other social movements, actually?
Is that going back to me? Yeah. Okay. I think, this is an ongoing conversation, and I think I want to be very nuanced here, because I also don't want us to fall into the trappings of identity politics, right? I want to be really clear. People of color and women and people from marginalized communities can continue to perpetuate systemic oppression just as good as any person from non-marginalized communities. So I want to leave that with a caveat, right? But that's why the education is so important, right? That's why it's not just about creating space for women to lead, but it's also about that deep political education that we do together. And so one of the things that I had an opportunity to participate in my local was and which Brian was a part of when he was on staff with our local, is an early career educators group, right? And so that brought together people who are early on in their teaching career, and we really did look to bring in people from again, we're women dominated, so it was all women, actually. Now that I think about it, the last program that we ran was all women, and the majority were women of color, right? And so that was, I think, a good example of where you do active recruitment, right, to women and other marginalized groups, and then you pair that with really good political education. And so that program ran through the entire year. We did some labor history, we did some organizing, teaching, right? We created a program that really ensured that the people who joined left the program much more knowledgeable about the role of labor in education, and then the role of labor, kind of cross sectors, and empowered with the skills to then organize, in their workplace, at their site, et cetera. And so I think it's really kind of, it has to be two pieces, both bringing people into the work, but then also giving them that political education, because we're not here to tokenize women. We're not here to tokenize people of color, right? We want to diversify, our ranks. And we do that by increasing accessibility and then really creating a strong political education program for people.
Crystal, you want to take the same question?
I think that is beautifully said. And I think what lacks maybe some of these parts here are access to good education. You're going to hear a lot more about white people than you're going to hear of anything more cultural in this area. And it would be great, to have one of y'all, maybe host a thing and being able to invite people and to have more opportunities. I think it would definitely help me a lot more too. As somebody who probably doesn't take education book-wise as I should, because if I start reading a book, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I'm falling asleep at night. I get just a little bit in and I'm falling asleep, and it's not my lack that I don't want to, it's because there's just so lot. And yeah, I think figuring out how to bring more of that into spaces that I'm in and whatnot. But I do agree that the political education is necessary.
Thank you. That was also beautifully said. Joanna.
Yeah, I agree with Alejandra and Crystal. Education, especially labor education, I think needs to be taught more in public school. When I went to school, in rural Wisconsin, it was still in the time pre-Act 10 and pre-right to work when Wisconsin was considered labor friendly. I did not learn anything about the labor movement until I got to college. So, or watching a documentary or seeking it out on my own. And those things are important. I think it's valuable to teach kids. It's valuable to teach women and young girls, that you can be a part of this. Show them, leaders, especially the female leaders, to empower them. Like, these women came before you, and you can do this too. You can affect change in your community. And I think it's also really valuable to have a strong group of, women that you can count on in your local or in your, organization. And we kind of, like for myself, I have my vice president, and, she and I will go back and forth, and we'll take things on and support each other. And, even if you need to say, hey, I can't do this tonight because I have a family thing, or, like I have another event, or I'm just too tired, we'll support each other by taking on, extra duties and so on and so forth. So always keeping it that way and helping each other out is very important too.
All right. So if listeners haven't heard us before, y'all, this show is rooted in what we call here at We Rise Fighting internationalism. So we have essentially a policy, or I guess a worldview, no borders in the workers' struggle. And we really root that in every single episode that we do. And Rick, for those that might not know, is from El Salvador, and our show is inspired by the movement in the 1980s for a free El Salvador without youth intervention. And so we just want to see what y'all think about that concept. No borders in the workers' struggle, internationalism. Of course, our view is that no workers should be divided from each other. We should be uniting across the world, of course, because the industrialists and the bankers and the corporations are all united, as we're seeing right now with the Palestine protests. It's very clear. There is a lot of uniting going on with the police, with the agencies, with the corporations and Wall Street, et cetera. So we just wanted to ask you all about that. What's your thoughts on that slogan, no borders in the workers' struggle, workers' unity, not just here in the so-called United States, but around the world? So how about you, Joanna?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Unions for all, no borders. I think it's important for all of us to come together and realize that, it is really us against these capitalist powers across the world. We're the only ones that can change it, and we'll have more power if we all work together. So sometimes it's definitely educating folks, that might not quite get all the way there, to help them understand that it's a collective and we have to work together. We're going to gain so much more ground if we do that, and just enough is enough with, it's my entire adult lifetime of, taking advantage of workers, the working class, and we can all support each other and getting better for all of us together as workers.
All right, Crystal?
No borders. I mean, yeah, that's it. I think I'll let it go from there. But yeah, no borders. It's ridiculous. This is what's causing all this bullshit now. You know what I mean? The damn border, a border, and we're killing everybody over a damn border. Yeah, that needs to end today. And these folks took an oath. They were not leaving until everybody was free. So I'm gonna hold them to it. Might need y'all's help. Okay.
All right. Alejandra?
Coming from a border state, it's so, frustrating and infuriating to hear the national discourse around immigration at the moment. I am fortunate enough to know so many people who organized within, the immigrant rights space. Our local is a founding member of SA Stands, which is an immigrant rights coalition here in San Antonio. And, you know, it is, and our district is home to, you know, many people who come here from other countries and settle here in San Antonio, the same way that my own family did, and many other families, you know, in Texas, right? I mean, Texas was Mexico. And what's remarkable to me is that some people don't realize that or recognize that, you know, when I would tell my 7-year-olds that, you know, they'd be like, what? I don't understand, you know, and then one of the privileges of being a teacher to 7-year-olds is then you get to talk through what borders, you know, really are, right? And deconstruct that with them, right? Because I think one of the most important things for everyone to like recognize is that, you know, borders are completely human made. You know, I've crossed the Texas-Mexico border many times. I mean, there's, you know, a river there. That's it. It's a natural barrier. But other than that, there's that plus, you know, hundreds of Border Patrol agents. And so, you know, I think it's like we've said before, one of the best ways to kind of undo some of that thinking is to just get them early when they're, you know, young, when they're kids, and the idea of a border doesn't really register with them as something that's, you know, immutable. And I think, you know, some of the work that we've been doing in our local is to really try to, you know, ensure that we are situating our struggle within that international context. And so we're very excited to be hosting the Tri-National Conference in Defense of Public Education in San Antonio this year, which will happen in November. And that brings together education unions from Canada, the United States, and Mexico. It happens every 2 years, and 2 years ago it was in Oaxaca. I was fortunate enough to be able to attend, and it's a really powerful convening because it brings together union educators across, you know, across North America. And what is always so remarkable to me is when we engage with people from Canada and from Mexico around, you know, education issues, it's all the same. They are struggling with, you know, the privatization, the push for vouchers, you know, the same attacks on academic freedom and you know, teacher autonomy. It may look different, you know, but I'm always struck by how similar the struggle is. And I think we need to, you know, we need to have more spaces where we're having those conversations. I think it's one of the definitely areas of growth for the U.S. labor movement. But I think what we're seeing right now in regards to Palestine is a real moment for the labor movement and for the agitation to be coming from rank and file. Our local was one of the first locals, I think, probably in the country to pass a resolution at our executive council in support of a ceasefire in Gaza. You know, we then took it to the Central Labor Council in San Antonio, and we took it to the Texas AFL-CIO COPE convention in January. And at the state level, the Texas AFL-CIO passed a resolution calling for a ceasefire. Was it a perfect resolution? Absolutely not. Did it call for all of the things that I would want to see? Absolutely not. But did it move the needle in the labor movement? I think it did, right? I think it was, many people were shocked to see Texas AFL-CIO call for a ceasefire. And, you know, just a few short weeks later, we saw the national AFL-CIO call for a ceasefire. So, you know, I think there are moments when the movement lurches forward, in response to what's happening in the world. And I think it's our job to really capitalize on those moments, right? And to ensure that they don't, that the energy doesn't evaporate. And so, I'm very invested in having the follow-up conversations, right? The conversations that are happening at the universities now around divestment and that kind of thing. And I think, it's really up to us in the labor movement to ensure that we continue to have this conversation and continue to move it forward within, all of our respective affiliates.
All right, and I have two questions wrapped up in one, and that might be it for me. So in the last year and a half, we've seen a little slight upheaval in labor struggle, with Starbucks workers, with UAW workers, Teamsters, SAG-AFTRA, Kaiser, certainly teachers have been on strike. We've reported on the quote unquote illegal teachers strike in Massachusetts in a few episodes here. And of course, also Palestine. So my first question is, what inspires you? What inspires you right now? And maybe what inspires you both as a worker, activist, and woman? And my second question is, music. What drives you? What moves you right now? What gives you energy for the struggle? What do you like as far as music? So those are my two questions. Oh, and it can go to Joanna first.
Oh, thank you. Well, for music, I get fired up with some good punk rock. When, riding to a rally, that's what I like to listen to. Some Rancid or some Green Day, get pumped up. Personally, I was just going to say, it's just been a very eventful labor spring. So a lot of events that we're working on as a local planning. We're really trying to reimagine our organization and how we approach state workers and how we get in contact with them. Like Alejandra was saying, like in the state that's not friendly to bargaining, we have state workers who still remember the old times when they used to be either AFT or AFSCME, and so sometimes that's a barrier to getting folks to join. So our approach now, and what very inspired just by members of my own local and people that I've met over the last year, and including Brian. Just get out there, show up, do what you can do, and that's what we're going to encourage our fellow state workers to do. Just join us, come meet with us, get involved in some things, and hopefully together we can create more solidarity in the state workforce in Wisconsin.
Great, thank you. And listeners, just to remind y'all, Crystal is reporting or speaking to us from an encampment in solidarity with Palestine. We're just thankful she was able to spend some time with us. What about you, Crystal? What inspires you right now, and what music do you like? What gives you energy for the fight?
I think, we've been fighting this pipeline for a long time. They currently have a shit ton of slap suit against a whole bunch of people. I think bailing people out who have been charged with felony abduction for standing on an easement with a sign, and it just lights a fire in me every time. Like, these cops standing over here with these zip ties inspires me every time. It keeps me coming. Because it's not going to get better. There's a fight to keep a federal prison in Kentucky. They're trying to put prisons everywhere around us right now, and they're not doing this to keep. They're not building new prisons to keep them empty. They're building them because of people like us who keep showing up, and they'll have to take us all, I guess, if we just can stand together and organize behind the walls. I don't know, but seeing this and more people coming definitely keeps me inspired. Wherever I can see it, I take something in from it and just keep it going.
And Alejandra, you were already touching on it, and that's actually, again, what inspired the question. What inspires you, and what kind of music do you like, or what drives you? for the struggle as far as music?
Yeah, I would say right now the students across the country are an incredible source of inspiration. As someone who was very involved in student organizing, I just know the impact that has, right, on your trajectory. And being a teacher as well, who organizes alongside students here in our own district, it's incredibly powerful to work with students. They are so clear-eyed around, justice and injustice. And I think what we're seeing at campuses across the country is such an act of love and solidarity, all of the things that the labor movement, is about, right, in action. And I think seeing the faculty members joining them, right, I mean, like, that is so incredibly powerful to witness, because we know that the future, the fight, right, is a multiracial working class across, age divisions, et cetera. And we're seeing that, in action at these encampments. And we're also seeing them resist and win. I mean, we're seeing them go up against, the millions of dollars that should be going to schools, that should be going to, housing, that should be going to meeting the needs of our community, but instead go to, all of the gear that the riot cops have. And the students are going up against them and pushing them back, which is really remarkable to see. And so, my heart is with everyone, including Crystal, who is, waging that fight, across the country. And in terms of music, I've got pretty varied tastes. I'm really feeling the new Idols album. They're a band from Bristol, England, where I've had the privilege of living in my life. It's a really amazing, diverse working class city in Bristol. And so they've got some real bangers on that one that I'm jamming to and are pumping me up these days. So I'll throw that one out into the collective playlist.
All right. So we're going to close it up for tonight, but we really want to thank you all for coming on the show. It's been a great honor, and we are not stopping until we're going to build a better world for all workers and community folks around the entire world. And we will have our music with us while we do that. And we send out solidarity to all of our fellow workers and students and faculty at campuses across the United States and our Palestinian friends. And we will take down the empire one action at a time. So solidarity, everybody. And once again, thank you, sisters, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And we're going to keep it moving. All right, Rick, back to you.
All right. Yeah, just same here. Thank you for being on the show. And to our listeners, thank you always for listening. Love and solidarity to all. Have a good night, everyone.